Hey there, thanks for joining us for this video. We're going to explore a little bit of developmental psychology and personality psychology, spiral dynamics, and Myers-Briggs type indicator. See how they might connect together. I'm here with two great friends, Michael Potter and Jared Rowley. I've asked them to share what stood out to them from this conversation we just had and just finished, so that you might want to keep watching. What's the hook, Jared?
It helps us to understand where we came from and where we're going, which helps eliminate a lot of fear, especially as we're in a time of transition right now.
For me, this is all very interesting to see how we can map out where we've been in history and to really project where we might go and to see how our personalities might be useful at any given stage.
There are implications and applications to be discovered. This video poses those to us and to you, and we invite you into the conversation. Let us know what you think. Now, this time we're going to talk a little bit today about something bigger. So if we've looked in the past at about how our own personal stories and our own businesses or entrepreneurial activities can be understood through type theory. Today we want to just look at how type theory relates to evolution over time as persons and as groups. We'll get to all that again like we did last time later. Want to start off with just a chance for quick introductions. So take it around.
I'm Michael Potter. I'm a filmmaker and I have a little production company where we do lots of commercials, and I have 3 kids and a wife.
I'm Jared Rowley. I am married with 4 kids, and I have a small venture capital fund.
Nice. And for those who don't know me, very similar. We're all kind of dads in this early 40 range, and filming this as part of a PhD program that I'm in, and excited to see where this goes. So where I would love to start actually is with what I have here on the screen here, y'all can see, with some questions about the way we've been over our lives. So let's start with ages 6 to 8, okay? Maybe we didn't foresee that we were gonna begin this way, but this is how I wanna start. So what was your main thing at age 6 to 8? And by main thing, I mean like you woke up and you did a thing, like this was like the thing that you did, right? And then motivated by, what were you motivated by? Why did you do the main thing? And then self-identity, how did you understand yourself? And we'll kind of get into that. We can kind of build them out together. I'm actually just going to write on here. So as you guys say things, maybe we'll have some common threads here.
My main thing at 6 to 8 was I wanted to get outside, and usually it involved like building a fort or something like that. I lived off kind of away, and so most of my days I was not with like friends from my neighborhood. It was with my brothers and my sister, and we go like create all kinds of things outside, like mining for gold in a little creek by our house, or building tree forts, or just a lot of stuff like that. Was my main thing, was getting outside. And you put creating outside. I would also
put it how you want it. Yeah, tell me.
Well, that works, but I also felt like it was like an adventure. Like I was exploring is kind of how I viewed it as a kid.
So what motivated you to explore outside? Like what was the why there? Not in today's language, but then.
Yeah, then it was just fun.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And how did you identify?
At 6 to 8, boy, that actually is pretty tough.
I don't know.
To think of how I identified. I don't know that I did identify. I just was me, you know, and I just went out, and I hadn't connected it to any kind of broader identity yet within society. It was just like, yeah.
So how were you not somebody else? How were you different than, say, the kids you went to school with?
Didn't think a lot about that. How I was different at that period was just very concrete, because you have your body and I have mine. Yeah. It was not in terms of identification yet.
All right, Michael, let's go to you. 6 to 8 years old.
6 to 8, I was living in Germany, so we were traveling a lot, and I guess, I mean, I definitely thought I was a cultured kid, you know. I was reading a lot and visiting some pretty cool places.
Okay. So
I didn't even know what the word cultured meant at that age.
I don't think I did either, but
But that was what was going on. You were visiting.
I was traveling, and I was the youngest of 4 kids who all liked the humanities. So I liked music and art and travel.
That's cool.
Okay. Cool, man. Youngest of 4, you said.
That's probably how I identified too.
Did you? Let's put it over there. I think that's
Yeah.
an interesting one. So like, yeah.
Definitely saw myself at the end of the tail of that family, you know.
Birth order. Jared, you probably, as you're hearing it now
that's
too.
useful too. To me, is like I identified within my family, not necessarily, or with my family. Like if it was at school, I was a rollie. And then maybe it expanded to my church as well. Is one where I noticed that I was maybe different, you know, and so like as a differentiator.
It's still super early, 6 to 8. We're talking like first grade, second
I
grade.
was thinking of middle school, or not middle school, elementary school. Sorry, but that might have been later, closer to 5th grade, maybe.
Okay. Well, how about what motivated you for your traveling and your things like that age again?
No motivation, I was just brought along. I was just the youngest. So the older kids wanted to go see places, so I would just be there too. I mean, motivation was family harmony, you know.
Okay. Family harmony, follow along.
I mean, living overseas was kind of like our identity. Like, we're the cousins that don't live in America, so we got pretty tight.
Okay. We're the international kids. 6 to 8 years old. Again, when did I move? At that age, I moved from Minnesota to California. So I can really remember, like, my main thing every day was, I had like a scooter. Just, again, playing in my little cul-de-sac was the main thing. Like, I wanted to do was get home, get my homework done as fast as I could, and get outside. Play in the cul-de-sac. I'll just write that. I was motivated by just wanting to have fun, I think, too, like Jared said. And I identified, I think probably my family role that makes total sense for me too is like 4th kid, easy. I think not that any of my siblings were like hard to raise or anything, but I think I probably, thought of myself that way maybe. Kind of making that up right now maybe. Yeah. But let's change it now. I want to say that something happens between 16 and 18. So supposing the main thing changes, what's the main thing at age 16 to 18? Now you're a junior, a senior in high school, maybe just before you go off to college. What's the main thing?
Snowboarding, surfing, and skating.
Yeah, sports. Yeah, 100%. And why?
Fun, but it also branched out to, I guess, to identity. But I was motivated by, like, it was my group, like that, like a feeling of security from my group was motivating, and like feeling cool, honestly, by it, you know.
Right. Yeah. Security within the group, wanting to have status within the group. Again, that may not have how you said at the time. Your 16, 17-year-old self would have been like, yeah, because it's fun, and I don't know if security in the group is why I'm doing this, but I definitely don't want to be a dork. Like your self-identity at the time was
snowboarder, or someone who does those sports. Still the family and identifying with my church were still big ones for me. At that point, I had started to maybe identify with labels that people had placed on me, like crazy, and also delinquent, maybe that's probably not the full right word, but just like the expectation was you're gonna ditch, you're not gonna take anything seriously. I have people all the time come up to me now who are like, I never thought you were gonna make it, like people who are my guides at the time, you know, or people that I looked up to. So yeah, something like that. And I could feel that, and I took those on for sure.
Got it. Yep. I hear that. Michael.
In high school, it was kind of like indie rock. It was like the music scene, looking for a way to rebel, but peacefully, you know?
So not punk rock, but indie rock.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I have no problem with the government, but I do have a problem with authority, so it was like one step down from anarchy, you know? But no, it was, yeah, finding that, okay, so the main thing would have been, yeah, like music and really just getting out of high school, like I was notorious for looking at the next phase rather than just enjoying it, so I don't know what the main thing was.
Yeah. Okay, well, motivated by...
The main thing is the next thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Growing up, I was home alone. All my siblings moved out, so I no longer had that to measure anything against. So I was like, let's just get out of here. Yeah.
And then the identity thing, is there anything interesting for you there?
I got into student government because I thought that's a ticket to get into a college and to basically feel like I at least have some control over my life. Like whatever you get as a student government person, but I wanted to be popular and wanted to be a benevolent, like, popular kid.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And that was an aspiration you must have been introduced to somehow, right?
Yeah,
like
probably.
The benevolent part there is kind of interesting.
Yeah, probably movies. Just seeing like, oh, you could be popular and nice, maybe.
Dude, there you go. I like that too. That's cool. By this time, I was, you know, I had played football. Oh, this is really the self-identity piece. Like, I had played football and enjoyed it, and then found myself confined by the group perception that, oh, if you play football, then you must be A, B, and C. And I was like, no, because I play football and I skateboard, and that's I'm different than what you thought. So maybe I'll write like different or more than what you thought. And that was something that I kind of did. I really didn't like I quit football my senior year. I didn't play it, and I probably could have done probably just still fine at that level. Wouldn't have played at college, but I could have played a senior year and enjoyed it. But yeah, did student government as well, and you know, kept skating. So if you read our journals, and if the journal is the thing, like Jared and I found some old letters we wrote each other, you know, it was like, this is what I skated today, I hit this thing, and like my whole journal entry was like, skating, girls, we haven't mentioned this, hello. Skating, girls, and working, we'll just say. I think I was at Macaroni Grill doing my busboy thing, 16 to 18 for sure. Motivated by, certainly not like college, man. That's admirable. You were thinking about that, because I did not. But it was, I guess, just having fun. I'm resonating with Jared on that still. I did save, like I saved money. So saving money, I had this big stack of ones. We'd get paid tips at the restaurant. And it's mostly like ones and fives, like a huge stack on my desk. I was beginning to take interest in buying my own stuff. That was kind of fun. So anyways, those are some of those. Let's jump 2 decades forward and round this out, 36 to 38, and then we'll see where this takes us. So now we're talking about much more near history. What has been or was your main thing in ages 36, 38?
For me, it was family, church, and then business. Those are my main things that like I spend most. Oh, and then ideas too. Those are like my main things, like that I spend my time on and think about and enjoy.
Do you want to try to place why?
Meaning and impact. And fun. Honestly, all of those are fun for me.
Fun's still in there. And then go for this self-identity piece.
I do think of myself as a businessman now. or an entrepreneur probably more specifically. Dad, but I mean, to put it in context of church, since that's obviously a big one for me, Son of God is one that is a core like identity for me that I map a lot of my life off of.
It's the exact same.
Is it?
Yeah.
And you want to know what? We might just cut to the end because is that not the exact same for me? Family, church, business. I think how we fill that bucket of our lives is different a little bit with each of us. But we have a job, we have church volunteer assignments, we've got our family, we've got educational things we're pursuing. Is there anything different about motivation here?
I'm motivated by seeing society benefit from me being here. So, I mean, I guess that's impact.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as someone in the media, I'm always wondering, are these skills going to be towards some end besides selling something for some third party? So I'm always wondering what's going to be that green light to actually make something impactful. So yeah, really, it's this exact same thing Jared said.
Okay. And let me take my view at this. Meaning, impact, having fun, self-expression. I'll add, and I may not be different from what you all said, but development and growth. Like that's kind of really like, I get this sense that like my life will be wasted if I don't keep pushing, right?
Yeah.
If I don't keep trying to improve, like don't squander.
Yeah.
All that went into this. This is kind of the feeling I have right now. At 41 years old, it's kind of like, bro, like a lot went in to get us to today. And if you just kind of start coasting, it was like, no, all that was so that you could, keep progressing. Like, don't chill,
Well, and it feels like at this phase, I've got more resources than I've ever had. I've got more frameworks, like what we're talking about, to understand life by. I've got, just knowledge in general. And so it's like, it feels like, one, the impact, but also I can grow now more in a year than I did, well, that's not true. I grew a lot it was maybe more subconscious in the younger years. Yeah. But now I can grow more in more tangible ways than I did when I was younger.
More awareness today than before.
Yeah, which is very fun.
Yeah.
Adds the meaning part a lot, that adds a lot of meaning to life.
Nice. Onto this, and just another way of Son of God, same thing. I really am trying lately to be a follower of Jesus. So like a disciple of Christ is the other one that I think I know true of both of you, good men too. Okay, so here we've got 3 different life periods, 6 to 8, 16 to 8, 36, 38. If someone read this and said, well, you look like you changed over the course of your life, would you agree?
Yes.
So in a way, we're very different. In our far right column here, what I want to do is actually just merge these together. And are there things that are like chief characteristics that cut across all those? So if our moms were in the room, if our family members were in the room, are there things that they would say haven't changed? Even though our main thing, our motivations, our self-identity has, are there things that we would say here haven't changed?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I think the underscoring of a lot of those things for me was curiosity, and then enjoying, to use the Jungian phrasing, the unknown. Like I enjoy being in the unknown. The novel is what's discovered in the unknown. And trying to make sense of that or like learn to apply it.
So that's true of your 6 to 8-year-old self, of your 16 to 18-year-old self, and your 36 to 38-year-old self.
Yeah, the board sports and the girls and all that, like they all very much came into those things,
Yeah. Okay, so I'll put some space between these now. We can see Jared's on the top. How about Michael, chief characteristics? What would your mom say is true of you then and now?
I'd say humor, like looking for fun and lightheartedness in every situation. has been something I've done since I was a baby.
Yeah. And isn't this so cool? Like we can see it in our own kids too, right? They don't even know it about themselves yet, but there's like, I saw that in you when you were a baby, barely toddler, and you're still that way, and I can predict that that part of you will stay the same. I don't know that the kids can, I don't know, we didn't know when we were that age, which part of us was stage and me now versus me forever almost. And I don't know that I know perfectly yet still, but looks like you guys have a couple of responses. Mine are probably along this line. I'll read in like sensitive, which is weird.
I would say that for me too.
Yeah, isn't that true, man? Sensitive and like I think I'm probably the one among many groups that I'm in that will bring fun, but not like, I'm not the loudest one in the group anymore, if I ever was. So but I think that's kind of true for me generally, is like fun creating, you know, like I want to make sure that people are having fun and that things are exciting. Certainly I think creative is a adjective that I probably would accept if someone told me that. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. Alien from outer space watches me across those lifespans. It's like, yeah, generally kind of creative. Okay, so then does this raise a question for you guys like it does for me? Which of these two truths feels more descriptive of you? That you are a dynamic person changing, or that you are a static person with kind of chief characteristics that remain?
I don't know, that's a hard, I mean, how do I think of myself? The stories I tell myself are more about the change. Like the transformations that I've had are the things that help me to feel inspired, proud of myself, the belief that I can have more transformations. But I think that the reality is the reason I'm able to have those transformations is because they're anchored in something else that is leading to those transformations. And so, but that's not, you asked how we generally see ourselves, and it would be that I'm someone who changes.
Yeah, I am that which changes. What do you think, Michael? Which is more true?
They're both true, but the dynamic one feels more true.
Yeah, why is that? Is it because it holds more promise of a potential future, or?
I think it's probably because the stagnant ones are the fish in the water. It's just like, you don't even fully notice those things they are always there, and so you don't really think about them as much.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I don't have, obviously, an answer. I don't think there is a answer for why these two things seem to both be true. Like Michael said, they both seem to be apparent. Like we could come up with answers without even very much prompting. But that there is that they kind of don't immediately, it's not evident how they immediately kind of work together, right? It's like, these fields are generally personality psychology on the trait domain that is pervasive across a lifespan, and then developmental psychology in the sense that we are growing. So two fields of psychology, you know, it's what's going on in the psyche, the study of the psyche. And so we've got different branches, and generally they don't correspond much, right? They're different domains for a reason. But it is always interesting when we find correspondences between them. And so what I love to move to now is a correspondence that has struck me over these last, I think, like 2 or 3 years now, and that I've just been kind of like oddly resisting believing, because I don't like some of the conclusions that could be drawn from it. But I'm through like holding this on my own, and I just want to share it and love the pushback and dialogue and just see where this can go. We're going to look at spiral dynamics, a theory that comes from the growth side of all this, the developmental psychology, and Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is really just a condensed way of looking at the big five, but it's just a prevailing, easy to understand expression of personality psychology. And if they correspond, what does that mean? Is it helpful? And does it open anything up new for us and any viewers as we're thinking about trying to have positive effect on ourselves, others, and society at large? We'll jump right to spiral dynamics as an articulation of growth, right? An expression of developmental psychology that looks at both the self, that is an individual person. Let me just say it this way. All systems, right? All systems, this theory suggests, go through oscillating patterns of feeling independent from or apart from a group, and then oscillating back towards seeing itself as part of that group. So on one end, it's a whole unto itself, and on the other end, it's a part of something else. So I say all systems, breaking that down. Supposing that every person is actually a system of a bunch of sub-systems, interrelated, interdependent subsystems. Michael Levin out here, Tufts University, whatever, saying that all cognition is collective cognition, or there's a better term for it than that. But whatever that may be, we are, as an individual, seemingly going through this same process, or at least analogous process of growth that groups go through, and organizations, economies, any scale of complexity. It seems to be a system that can be seen as going through this oscillating and progressively transcendent process of growth. A lot of words there, but others have taken a look at this. So those who are watching who may not be familiar with some of these other names, you got Piaget back in the day, Erik Erikson, Abraham Maslow, actually, even if you think of the Maslow's hierarchy, kind of outlines kind of from a basic to a self-actualized progression of transcendence, and doesn't say anything about this oscillation between part and whole. But you'll get that part and whole stuff in Kegan, Robert Kegan, a Harvard professor, Suzanne Cook-Greuter, a professor who's done a lot on this, or a researcher who's done a lot on that. And then in particular, spiral dynamics, Claire Graves back in the late part of the 20th century, picked up by Don Beck and Christopher Cowan, written out in a few different books and articles on the subject. Today there's a whole kind of community that I can't really say I'm a part of because I don't know, I never signed up anywhere, but that's out there in YouTube land, integral theory, you know, those who, and there probably are group gatherings, I've never attended anything, and just been aware of these theories kind of from the sidelines, I guess you could say. But getting into spiral, so what's kind of consistent across these all these contemporary theories of developmental psychology is that there is trade-off relationships between these different positions. We need to be independent wholes, but we are necessarily parts of a bigger system. So let's just kind of click forward. Looking at spiral dynamics, if you do a Google search online, you'll see it typically drawn as this continuous progressive cycle. And what I'm interested in exploring is the tension points in between. That to me is kind of like where all the action is. So like if we took the time to dive into this theory, we would see that persons as well as society pass through these progressive stages such that they may prize security over survival but not care about anything up above it, right? So this purple stage here is often at the individual level, something that children experience, so ages 6 to 8, we talked about a second ago. And as society had it, you know, Beck postulates this is something back pre-history, right? So something like 50,000 years ago or something like that. And then as... Yeah, that's what I meant. What did I say, prehistory?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
That could work too.
But yeah, pre-written history, I guess, recorded history. Recorded history beginning with some of this energy and power. Groups start to get bigger in size. As they get bigger in size, they encounter new life conditions, the term that he uses, and they have to grapple with trade-off relationships at a new scale, which requires a new form of thought. Okay, so individuals, persons who are now repeating this cycle of growth that we saw in life history of human kind, experience this red stage, often is said, at and around ages like, between 8 and 13, 14, something like that. It's middle school generally. We'll get into what each of those mean, I guess, but the point is, when people talk about these stages, the point I want to make right now is when people talk about these stages, often it's here's a pattern of thought and a way of being in the world, which transcends the former and include it when it's healthily done. But there's not a lot of talk about what happens in between those stages. So this purple to red transition, for example, is it a smooth transition? Does it happen on a day? Or is it somewhat discontinuous and tenuous, tumultuous? I think it's the latter. Mm-hmm. So drawn as a series of S-curves, this is another new way I have, which destroys it flattens the spiral in a way. It destroys that dimension. You can imagine like a z-axis running through this graph. Yeah, but what this provides us is a sense of complexification as we grow up, more complexity, more differentiated integration, everybody's favorite term. Call it complexification as we transcend. But the transition shown here through this two or multiple S-curve sort of visualization shows a gap here. And for anyone who hasn't watched it, we have another little video where we talk about what might be going on in the gaps between S-curves. But I liked this visualization for how it captures that discontiguous, discontinuous transition and the tumultuousness that can occur at that transition. Setting that aside, here's a visualization that kind of tries to show this along with the last conversation we had, where we're starting off in a certain form, say beige here, which we'll describe as a set of instincts or habits that help us survive. And these little visualizations I'm going to put on the screen, I want to give attribution, come from an article written in a publication called What is Enlightenment, published I think back in 2002, but an interview they did with Don Beck, the primary author of Spiral Dynamics. Anyways, looking at some of this, it's about just basic physical necessities, and it helps us survive. So very small groups, like it says, 100,000 years ago. Purple then came online as beige came to the end of its S-curve, right? Its adaptive fittedness to the environment and the life conditions kind of began to peter off, and we had the upcoming of a new S-curve. This doesn't look like an S-curve anymore. I bent it back on itself. We need a better artist to show this actually looking like a spiral. But purple then coming online, as they say, online. 50,000 years ago, it's about getting together in tribes, being safe, and having a tribal identity that transcends the individual identity, but includes the individual identity. So that's the important move here that we're doing when we do spiral. It's like, okay, there was this, now there's this. It has transcended that, but it also includes it when it's expressed healthily. Okay, rather than have me just talk through each of these blah, 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 and talk for 50 minutes, I'm going to put them up here one by one and just kind of ask if those who don't have as much familiarity with this want to pause, go watch some videos on spiral and come back. This could be a good place to pause. Jared and Michael both know a bit more on this, so I don't need to sit here and rehash all this with them. But let me just say to you two, can you see we'll just put up those five that we've just looked at, or that are on the screen right here, any connections between the story work we did just a second ago about our own, age 6 to 8, age 16 to 18, 36 to 38, and connections here, how you changed across the course of your life, and any words on this page here that you would use to kind of ground what you had experienced personally?
There's a microcosm of society in every individual's progression from infancy. And yeah, I definitely see some parallels.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of like ages where it's like, obviously I'm a baby for beige, and I'm just needing my needs taken care of. Purple is all the different, the way that I viewed the world very much aligned with that and kind of navigated it. And then my 10 to 15, maybe 17 was red, you know, where there was definitely like, how do I fit in? Like, and it's like, that one's more the might is right kind of idea, but it wasn't, that wasn't totally it for me, although there was an element of that, like thinking like, how do I measure up here, like physically, you know, like it was more in like a hierarchical terms, like of where do I fit, like that, like kind of a thing. Blue is a black and white, and I definitely felt that until I was about 25-ish. And then orange was, I remember like talking, where it's just like, no, logic and reason, and I felt that deeply, where it's like, I need to be able to prove everything that I am thinking and feeling, as if that was the only and highest form of knowing, I guess, was kind of where I was at during that phase.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic for me too. I think there's some of this that I really enjoyed when I was, you know, in, say, middle school. Football and sports are often in this red zone, where it's just about, you know, let's just see who can knock the other guy over. Like, literally, football is so violent, you know. It's just like simulated warfare. And in terms of history, this is a lot of warfare, right? Like just like who's gonna win in terms of who's strongest. Yeah.
Well, and sports are a great way of, you know, if each phase you incorporate the previous phase, sports are a great way of incorporating the red phase in a healthy way.
Yeah. To allow for expression of it within something that is itself, as a society, more mature and more right, well-rounded. We don't need to kill each other. We can debate, and we can argue around ideas, and that's kind of that orange thing. And then if we do need to use our bodies, we'll go do a game, but we don't need to actually pick up weapons.
Got the Olympics, and you know, that's why the symbolism of the Olympics is a lot bigger than just who won.
Yeah. The blue thing, I can remember feeling very reassured in a way that I still am, but not in the same way. So I feel like, you know, like in terms of my worldview, there was a time when, especially as a young 20-year-old or so, I was pretty assured that I knew it all. I figured, you know, I kind of, not knew it all, I don't think that's what I thought, but I was pretty sure that I was in the right camp. And that if the whole world could be in my camp, I think that's the important piece of this. Yeah, and there's still some to that. Like, I feel like I, as much as anyone else, have something to share. But the blue thing is this in-group, out-group. So the way that we form unity at this blue level is by excluding, essentially by saying what we do and do not do. You'll notice here on the page talks about laws, regulations, discipline, are what essentially create the boundaries of our society. You either do or you do not keep these laws. If you keep the laws, then you're in the group. You don't keep the laws, then you're out of the group. We will kick you out. That's what that's about. Yeah. And that was pretty vivid for me, I think, as for all of us, when I was in those late teens and early 20s area. And then, so this orange thing, Jared, you were going at this. Do you want to kind of put words around how you understand the orange worldview? This, Beck says, it starts about 300 years ago, right? So this is kind of Enlightenment era thinking.
What is falsifiable, I think, is a very good way of defining orange, right? Like, it's the age of reason. It's all, you know, all these things where it is logic-based. It's external, like observation of material things that can be measured and falsified. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but the interesting thing for me with each of these is you see them on an individual level, but then on a society level, it's like, how do you know what phase you're in? It's which one are you using to make your decisions as a society? Basically, what's the epistemology that you're using as a society? You know, is it might is right for red? Or is it an external authority figure, like a religious figure, something like that for blue? Orange now, we're probably in a transition between orange and green. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but orange, we're looking at it, definitely in the 50s and 1950s and, you know, and the founding of America as well. It was the idea of like reason, like can we reason, you know, we went from the divine right of kings for blue, and then we went from that, John Locke came along and said, no, it's a social contract, and he reasoned his way to individual rights, that each individual has divine power. And so, you know, how we get there is a different thing for both sides.
What we can see is that we have oscillations on the left of individualism, a sense of independentness, of wholeness in and of myself or in and of ourselves. We are independent wholes. And then on the right here, we have these cool colors which are designed to represent a collective interdependence or partness. I am part of a society. So down here at the very basic, the baby, we'll just take this from the individual perspective, something I think everybody can understand. The brand new newborn just eats, sleeps, poops, right? That's pretty much it. You just survive as a baby. As you begin to just have an awareness, one of those early awarenesses is I am a part of my family. So Jared and I actually, Mike, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but in the investing work, did some research with those who were customers of a pajama company. And the product was being sold to parents, mostly mothers, and to their young children. And one of the themes that showed up over and over was customers telling us that they loved these pajamas because it allowed them to get their family all to match, to wear the same clothes. And well, why does that matter to you? Well, it doesn't really matter to me. It's more that it matters to my kid. And what age is your kid? Usually they said about 2 to 6. And to me, I'm like, yeah, that's spiral purple. Spiral purple, like Jared said, at 6'8", like, I don't know that I am a self yet over here in red. All I know is I am part of, and there's the key word, part of this family. And if I have a literal uniform, we are of one form, this family. I fit in and I'm unified with my family. And it's evident in the way that, you know, we're dressed.
Well, it's interesting too that when we were all going back to how we identified at that time, family was the core identifier that we used.
There was nothing else yet, that we had even to choose amongst, right? Yeah. And then as we went through high school and things, there were other activities or excellences, if that's a word, like things we excelled at. And I think that's what red can be too, is kind of like, well, maybe it's not something physical, but it's something that I can excel at. And so like kids want to have a thing. Like I noticed this in my own kids, like in middle school. One of them expressed frustration to me at one point actually. It's like, why do I have to have a thing? Even adults will ask me, so what do you do? Like, so which sport do you play? Or what's your thing? And he's just like, what is this? Like I have to have a thing. Like people want to pigeonhole me into just one thing. It's like in middle school, you've got your excellence and your excellence, you're excellent. What are you excellent at? And that question doesn't come around as much once we get through those middle school and early high school years, right? Then it's into something else more like just fitting in. So again, basic motions left and right is standing out and fitting in. And then it's just like, as we go up, it just becomes more complex in the sense of what is standing out. Over here, I guess fitting in with the country. Down here, it's fitting in with the local tribe. This is fitting in with the kingdom, or standing out from within a kingdom. Fitting in inside the country, putting on, and over here in blue, we'll put on like a national uniform. You talk about the Olympics, it's kind of like red as like a means of achieving blue or expressing blue, right? Because it's nation against nation. Orange then, in the societal frame, is us kind of beginning to be a little bit more multiplistic, a little less ethnocentric and nationalistic, and just working in a market economy, right, Jay? So it's like anyone in the world who wants to participate in this market economy, we can all do it. Everybody's, survival of the fittest in this new arena, not at the literal survival arena, but this is an arena for competition, right? All right, Jared, so then you were saying the move to green, and for those who are interested in applying this developmental psychology to society at this, if that's the level that's intriguing people, this is now, it gets to where it's really interesting here, right? Because Beck says this began 150 years ago, and I think people will, as they listen to this, feel tensions. Maybe they'll perceive themselves as somewhere in this general zone here. I feel torn between this orange thing and this green thing, and maybe even already the yellow thing a little bit, but how would you describe that tension and the transition that we're going through as a society between orange and green?
Again, the epistemology, like how are we finding truth? Orange, again, logic and reason, falsifiability. Green now is much more rooted in experience and personal experience. And that is a big shift because it's not something that can be measured or pointed at as like, this is something that is true for everyone necessarily, at least how I'm seeing it. It's a personal thing. One of the words that it's been given right now is standpoint theory. Just like my standpoint is this, and that is all I need to know to justify my decision. Whereas before it'd be like, show me the statistics to justify your decision. Now it's, I feel this, it's my truth.
Yeah. Certainly there's ways of speaking about this that show its limitations, and then other ways that will show, of course, the added value. It wouldn't be upward progressive if it wasn't adding new value. And so I think this is a legitimization of qualitative research methods and qualitative research findings, right? Where the orange is banking a little bit more on quantitative and math, STEM sort of subjects. Green is finding legitimate place within that frame, if it is effectively including the science frame, which I don't see that always happening, so that would be like an unhealthy expression. But yeah, certainly a validation of the qualitative forms.
I like what you're saying. I don't see that happening. And that's because we're in the tension phase, right? Like always it's messy in between the two phases, right? Going from blue to orange, we had all kinds of messiness in like as we were moving, the Reformation, moving from blue to orange was messy. And we're seeing the same thing where it's like, we don't have clarity around how to apply this epistemology yet, but it's the idea that things are relative and that experience is how we find truth, and eventually we'll be able to pull the orange in with the green, but right now they feel at odds, but that's very natural for a transition period.
Yeah, first we differentiate, then we integrate.
Exactly.
In our previous conversation we had talked about we need to let things fully die, try to live without them, and then find ways of carrying forward the previous virtues, right? And so I sense that as well. Just this week, there was a TED Talk I watched that was a speaker, did a great job, did something much better than, preaching an ethnocentric, lower order message or some sort of like beating the chest, I am better than all, braggadocious message or something lower order, right? It's awesome, it's better than a lot that else could have been expressed. But I found the limitations of a green expression, which didn't include much orange and not yet the yellow above it. So just a bit on that, and it's only an example, one amongst many. But the suggestion was that we need to not fall prey to a single story. The proposition here was that there is outputs of a predictive model, which is maybe what our cognition is doing when we're thinking and interacting with people. We're predicting, right? Our brain is a prediction machine. So if we're predicting what's going to happen, and if we're predicting inaccurately, then maybe it's because our mental model was trained on limited information. So as we work across national boundaries, and especially across boundaries of populations, subpopulations like a majority perspective, here we're a bunch of white guys. So if we're working with people who aren't white guys, we might have limited experience with people of different sexes and ethnicities. And we would interact with them having less data, and we'd make wrong predictions. And so the speech was about, you've got to, don't rely on a single story. The way it was presented, I took to mean, don't overly confide or don't place too much confidence in your mental model. You know, you have to assume, like, this is my reframing of what could have been said. The way it was said was, you shouldn't form conclusions about people until you've talked to everyone within that group. To your point about individual experience and the appropriate validation of each individual's perspective, that is, I think, a green enlightenment. And the shortcoming here is, it is entirely impractical to think that I'm going to wait to make a prediction until I've experienced every person's perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what the green is doing, is validating that, but it alone brings us to a new dilemma, which is, well, there is still this thing called time, right? And how do we engage with the fact that there are constraints on time and space, and we can't have, say, like a legislative form that does include every single person, so there just needs to be some sort of, right? So like the attempt to undermine or deconstruct grand narratives as such, I think, is part of the green motion. And there's a productive piece to this probably, in that it's helping us to move away from oversimplified narratives. That's good. There's a foregrounding of power as primary to the human condition. And that's because this is recognizing, seemingly for the first time, that there is a distribution of power along the scale, and that every person has inherent worth, and so we need to challenge that, right? Anyhow, so let's move up to yellow and turquoise, describe them quickly, and then try to move past this present articulation of tension that we experience perhaps as persons, but certainly as society. And then I want to propose this idea about, this is all the developmental psychology, and I'm saying that there might be a personality psychology that layers onto this. What would that even mean? So let's get there. Yellow is something I think is going to be catalyzed by the oncoming embrace of AI, honestly. I think this will allow us to be, as it says here, much more systemic in our thinking and modes of analysis. So if orange is a scientific worldview, mostly analytic reductionist scientific worldview, breaking things down into parts and understanding the world as a machine, which is actually not the best metaphor. That's actually not how the world works. A yellow way is going to look at science through the lens of something more like systemic holism, understanding all things as being interrelated, and apply more advanced mathematics than a lot of what we do in orange is just linear or logistic regression. So we're kind of using what I think will be perceived as, retrospectively, very rudimentary analytic tools.
It's the idea of seeing the elephant by feeling the trunk or the legs or the whatever's kind of where we're at right now, the orange.
Yeah, it breaks things into parts.
Yeah,
and
instead of the whole system.
The holism is going to be an exciting thing, and I think it will begin to really need these new AI tools to help us to transition into yellow. This is a little bit of a personal belief. Turquoise, as above that, is just out of sight. Here, Don Beck this was published, I guess, 2002, so he's thinking 1970s. At this point, you have fewer persons who are experiencing or expressing these modes of thought, and certainly fewer societies that are seen as operating in this way. So with less data, I think we should probably appropriately have a little less confidence in what's being described, right? So we're starting to kind of feel through the darkness a little bit into the future. And there are those who try to go 3 or 4 stages above this even, and I just drew my picture as leaving the page because we presume that this is going to continue on forever, but this is where we have a majority population and what we can actually see. But it's interesting to my next point to make sure that we even understand what the predictions are. So this is an oscillation back towards some form of collectivism, some form of higher order unity, right? So if green is greater than blue in that it's not only a unity by exclusion, it's a unity through inclusion, but it's an inclusion of still persons, like humans are the thing that's being included. It seems to me, and I think to others, that the turquoise level of inclusion or of group identity will be more at the all life level, or the whole world level. So all living forms, not just humans. There's an interconnectedness that's perceived at this level, as, again, if it's inclusive of yellow, then it's going to have that holistic scientific piece within it. And it's a lot more spiritual than earlier forms of operating. Okay, so now that we've understood this idea of spiral dynamics, we've gotten a glimpse at it, let's jump into the connection that we're trying to make. So leave the developmental psychology, jump back to personality psychology through the lens of Myers-Briggs, which itself, as I mentioned, is just an expression of the same thing. A rose by any other name is just as sweet. So you might prefer Enneagram, you might prefer any latest tool, maybe Strengths Quest or the Big Five. Most analytic, or not analytic, but academic researchers do use the Big Five. It has a lot of statistical validity, statistical, I guess, reinforcement to it. But there's just as much, I think, experiential reinforcement to, say, Myers-Briggs. And this kind of set of 4 constructs as opposed to 5 constructs, they map pretty closely. So anyways, for those who are MBTI haters, just go with this for a second. What we want to look at are these 8 patterns of mental activity as identified. So we have another video where we talk about this in a little bit more depth, the one that we filmed before this, so go check that out. But for the sake of our audience, let's just remind. We can do this quickly, and I want to have you guys remind the audience. Yeah, see? What was this one about? I said, remember your first
Kiss. Hold on.
No, your first time at Disneyland.
Oh, right.
That's what we had said, but hey, first kiss
Okay,
too,
so
man.
it's like
First kiss.
Remembering.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, remembering. And we said that often when people do this, they'll close their eyes. They're searching in their memory for concrete details about
To get away from external stimuli to go back into some place.
Correct. It's as if this flashlight of the mind can fly outward or inward, and it can't do both at the same time. Right. And so what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, if we didn't have the ability to do that, we'd continue to make the same mistake over and over again. Great. Extroverted sensing, remember what that one was?
Throwing the things at them.
Yes.
That's what's happening right now in the world outside of you.
Yes. And what's interesting, we had suggested you can't use any of these tools in the mind at the same time. So have you ever found yourself in a conversation like the one we're having right now, extroverted intuition, the exchange of ideas and this free and kind of extemporaneous approach, and not hear what was, for maybe some others, a very obvious sound? Mm-hmm. So like in our last video, there was a motorcycle out here, and I happened to notice that one. But there were tons of other sounds that I just ruled out, right? Yeah, other things that I just chose not to hear, or didn't choose, but like I couldn't hear because I was doing extroverted intuition. Yeah. Extroverted sensing, if I wasn't doing this whole dialogue and deep in thought thing, I might have noticed the time passed, you know? Yeah. I might have heard the sounds, whatever. So okay, there you go, extroverted intuition, brainstorming is the term we gave to that one. And then introverted intuition, we gave this one a name. Michael, it's what happens in the shower. You're sitting there and you have an insight, and it's just like,
yeah, I forgot the name.
Visioning is what we called it. Yeah, and I say we. It's what this booklet, Myers-Briggs Company, refers to that union function as visioning. And yes, as we said in the other video, this image that you see on the screen and that we are referring to these subjects, full credit is to Myers-Briggs Company. So those are the 4 ways of taking in information. And then we talked about 4 different ways of coming to conclusion. We talked about the speed with which one would drive a car. We started off in the small town. Do you remember which one that was? The laws of...
just your personal physics.
Laws of physics is what we had said, yeah. Laws of physics. We call this analyzing, but it's the use of a set of principles that we've come to believe are effective guides for pretty much anyone through the world. We're self-authorized, but the principles that we're holding to can be universalized, right? So deontology as a mode of ethics may arise from this introverted thinking, self-authorized sort of thing. On the other hand, consequentialism as a mode of ethics might feel most comfortable for those who have a preferred use of extroverted thinking or extroverted feeling. That is to say, where will it lead? What's going to happen as a result? What's the consequence going to be? And so it's like what happens out here is what should determine what I do in here, right? And so the external thing with the driving idea was the law of the land as opposed to the law of physics. Well, in addition, perhaps. But it's like I need to, or back to this idea of competition, we had said that the extroverted thinkers are very competitive. They like to win. And so it's like, what's on the scoreboard? Where are the inbounds and out of bounds, paint on the ground, on this football field that I'm on? That's extroverted thinking, is looking outside to logical indicators for the rules, for the affirmation and direction. Yeah. Okay, and then looking outside for harmony is the difference there. It's just a shift from essentially what we're looking at. Are we looking at logic or are we looking at values? So the extroverted feeling, we called it harmonizing, was the outside attention to values. And then the introverted feeling is independent of what's going on around me. Sometimes it's fun to say when you're with somebody, for example. You could say, a value of yours is called into question and a value of your parents is called into question. You can, I don't know what the conflict would be, but supposing you can adhere to one, but it would require you to not adhere to the other. Who wins? And it's like, well, I don't want to disappoint my parents. So I will do, even though it's not what I would want to do, it's not what I believe is the right thing to do, I'll do that, right? I'm going to harmonize rather than be authentic. Or I'm going to be authentic even though I know my kid is going to be mad at me. This is what I need to be able to sleep at night, sort of thing. So authenticity as opposed to harmony. And you can see where those could come in conflict, even though they're both feeling functions, right? So now let's try to see if these place on here and why that would even be interesting, and what the implications could be. I notice, so here what we're doing, again, we're looking at one of those perceiving functions. This is the extroverted sensing. This is I'm throwing stuff at you. This is the very vivid and alive world. I'm not lost in thought. I'm not lost in, better said, because thinking obviously happens. I'm not lost in conceptual thought. I'm not sitting through a 2-hour theory conversation, right? Or if I am, I'm going to use like a tool to help me get the 5 nuggets. I'm going to, get the transcript and use the AI to help me find what are the 3 things that I should be paying attention to. Action-oriented, pragmatic. These are the same things we had in our last video. I just put into ChatGPT, say, tell me about STPs, ESTPs, ISTPs. That's these 2 types here you see shown. Credit to 16 personalities for these nice little graphics to help us make better sense of this all. And now above that you can see reminders of what Don Beck is saying that beige is like as a developmental stage of all systems, persons, and societies. One thing I know about STPs is that they like camping, survival sort of experiences. So that just feels like 100% connection to me. But they will enjoy, especially the ISTPs, just like if you go and like just YouTube survivalist and just watch the things that they have to do. They're whittling stuff. They're good with tools. They're able to be pretty creative and opportunistic in the way that they take resources and make a hut out of something, you know what I mean? Yeah. Without like a blueprint or anything like this. So I think it's like a fantastic thing, like a fantastic skill set. It's really useful. Impressive, yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, if with just a little that you, or all that you know about the STPs and these other stages, can you see them fitting better at one other stage, or is this? When I first thought about this, it was really just that. I mean, it's like, wait a second, these people are really good with their hands in an environment without blueprints. And they like being outside. So that to me just felt like going on a camping trip. Like that's it, like it's a camping trip. Yeah. As a leisurely activity that people of this type would choose no matter what stage they're in. And if life for some reason reduced to disbanded society or something, then these people would probably be our leaders. Right? Earlier, tell us what you were saying about the movie and the
The movie Triangle of Sadness explores this a bit, but I don't want to tell you because you haven't seen it yet. So it's basically about how what might be valuable in society, that's everything's going well, it's very different when a crisis erupts. The roles might even reverse to where the help becomes the leader. So.
So I guess that's fantastic. That's 100% kind of where my head is at with this. This is not trying to like denigrate STPs, and it's on the converse side, we're going to get up to the turquoise side. It's not to elevate that type. It's like these are life conditions that Beck is describing, and it seems like there are adaptive responses, natural skill sets that seem to be most prized. So if we were in this life condition, living in small groups of 5 to 10, the person I would most want in my group is someone who knows how to, survive, to find the wood, to get the water, to clean the water, to kill the fish, to clean the fish, to hunt, to do all these things.
They'll thrive there the most.
They'll thrive there, and we'll all applaud them and reward them the most.
Yeah.
They'll be what we call a leader.
Yeah.
So over here then, I've switched and gone to the right side of the spiral. My little drawing here in the middle is showing that purple stage. Again, the terms here are related to those who have the type preferences for extroverted sensing and introverted feeling. These are ESFPs and ISFPs in MBTI language. ChatGPT describes them as artistic, spontaneous, energetic, lively, valuing freedom and expression. And in the spiral terms, we're seeing these, the purple has this matriarchal tribal thing to it. When we're talking about forms of civilization, we move from hunter-gatherer in beige into more of like an agricultural, let's stay in one place sort of society with purple. But does it not seem that that comes with the beginning of the safe space? The permanent space, the place where you can be safe inside of the tent circle and where you're kind of at risk outside the tent circle. So it's like the beginning of nurturing generally. So for me, that's where I see that ESFP thing in our last combo. That was like that value that I think that SFPs have, which is a loving embrace of all the members of the tribe or group. And I feel like if you were in that group, if survival needs are a little bit more taken care of, we're not now in a group of just 5 or 10, we're in a group more like 50 or so. We would like it if our leader had a little bit of care, right? We don't need as much. We have the survivalists, they're still in the tribe and they still hold a role, maybe a secondary role. But what we might find ourselves elevating is the matriarch. And not that the matriarch couldn't do the survival things, but she would perhaps have the ability to do the survival things and have this caring and beginning of tradition forming, kind of nurturing care to her. The red, to me, again, is, let's take it from MBTI. We've got this introverted sensing now, that's the switch. Let me go back. We had extroverted sensing over here. This is me throwing stuff at you because life is just a whole lot of throwing stuff at us when we're small groups of up to 100. But now we get up to a little bit larger society and there's beginning to be a sense that every day isn't entirely different, right? Some days are exactly the same and we can begin to form traditions and habits. We need some people who are reliable and dependable to just make sure that we maintain law and order. We're going to become more competitive. There may be fighting within our tribe, and we'll elevate the largest warrior, right? The largest ESTJ cop that you can imagine, right? The one that just wins. In a prison, for example, today, if there was a prison environment where people survive, but it's kind of survival of the fittest. Might very much is right here. There's no jail guard around here, so what I say goes. Yeah. Well, why? Well, because, right? Yeah. And so that STJ nature, I've heard this, that STJs show up disproportionately represented in police force, some of the armed forces, and in gangs.
They're there to establish the order and scale it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, to create order sometimes takes a view of like, I will go out and exert my will onto the world, and that is to bring everyone in line.
And this would create new order, right? So like that's Beck's thing. If people want to go read his What is Enlightenment article that I sent you guys to, like he does a great job of kind of showing how this can naturally occur as life conditions change, as groups become larger and more educated and more bumping up against other groups. So as we get bigger groups, we get different dynamics. So, okay, cool. The group size has now grown to perhaps up towards multiple hundreds of thousands. So we jumped through, I guess the order of government over here in red is often like a kingdom, right? So we take that warrior, the person who wins on the battlefield, and we make them our king, right? And this could be a size of 1,000 up to 10,000 or maybe 100,000. But after that, we're going to start to be like an empire. And we're going to assume there's so many people in this empire that our warrior leader must be a god, right? Must be more than just a man, right? And so this person is somebody who is maybe still, this is like a monarchy form of government, but that person is the benevolent God, right? God King. And so we look to our leaders and we appreciate their ability to maintain tradition, maintain stability, keep the Huns at the gate. They're not necessarily the ones going and fighting, though. I see them as people who can provide a warm. I don't know if you're noticing, but what's going on in this pattern is that the T types are always on the left over here. They're the ones using perhaps left brain, left hemispherical predominance. And over here, this nurturing right hemispherical is about being a group, right? So there's the left side, let's go this way, here's red. Over here, things are identified, discretized, and everything kind of wins on its own merits. So it's, right, because I know you're reading McGilchrist, push back on me if this doesn't seem right, but like this feels like left hemispherical sort of competitive, anger-based, anger-associated.
Lateralizes in the left hemisphere.
Right, and an approach to kind of controlling the world. We saw that. And over here, there is then a transcendent move back towards a right hemispherical integration, which is allowing for more of a collective identity. We're going to start to see the world more as a gestalt. And it's not the world yet. No, the world is our empire. Yeah. Right? This is our ethnos. The whole world is our empire. Everything outside of it is barbarian, right? Barbar. Out there is barbar, and here we're intelligible. And so we don't yet realize that this is kind of racist, to use today's terms, right? But it's ethnocentric. It's bigger than red, which was egocentric. But I see these types as being adaptive at helping us to grow up into that bigger society, forming traditions, forming norms, establishment of dogma, and maintaining stability through tradition. Cool. Let's get here to the orange then. Orange is about exercising that enlightenment mind through the math, through the science. Here you can see that I think this is now when intuition comes in as the form of perception. It's introverted in its orientation, it's long-range planning. What the NTs will often do is not see themselves within the thing that they're analyzing. Like the anecdote is not relevant. What's relevant is the pattern. What's relevant is the theory or the strategy. Like very subserving of my own needs. But what that means is often the critique of Enlightenment modernism is that the map maker is not included in the map, right? And so just flipping a little quicker now, over here to the green, this is that prizing of qualitative rationality, saying to the map maker, hey, you are actually on the map. Your standpoint does influence your perspective, and so it's at least part of the story. And as Jared is mentioning, in the transition, it's made to be all of the story until it can be brought back in as only part of the story again. But here the NFJs, those who use intuition and now this extroverted feeling, being the ones that we prize in today's like green environment. This is, again, we mentioned, I think in the last video, Barack Obama was perceived as like a really well adapted leader for that moment. And we could talk about other political leaders today. Just to crack ahead on these last two, and you can see what we're doing here as we do this, we're bringing in all those former types, and we've got this little growing thing here which is showing transcendence but inclusion. So not to show that any of these later stages are actually better, but or really in any way better, other than that they're just encompassing more complexity, as that intuition is kind of akin to do. And it's actually only working because it includes the former things. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, that's right. And if at any moment red goes away, for example, like you are no longer able to protect yourself, all of it comes crumbling down. That's right. Now you're straight back to red. None of the other ones matter.
Yeah, it must include. So this, I really want to show that these like larger persons here seem to be the ones who might be prized as leaders in that moment, but if anybody else is not participating, it will fall away. Yeah. Today's conception of leadership mostly is this NTJ. The ENTJ is prized today, majority, like way disproportionately overrepresented in positions of executive leadership. 2% of the population at large, but like 14% of executive leaders are ENTJs. So it's like, seems to be quite necessary in the orange situation, which if we're unfamiliar with, again, essentially like materialist capitalism, those like leading a large organization. Our society now is to the order of millions, and we've got room for like economies and large companies within it. Here now we're trying to bring the entire society together as one global society, and we need a different form of leaders insofar as it can include all the formers. And here now maybe AI is helping us to get beyond even like a world governance, or towards really an actual functioning world governance, as opposed to just a world citizen self-conception. And that seems to me like it will require this extroverted use of intuition, introverted use of thinking. This ENTP type of character seems to be well situated to provide the leadership that's needed there. And this more spiritually oriented NFP type seems to be adapted to what is predicted as the life conditions here. There's more I can say about that, but out of sake of time, I'm going to throw this image up and just ask you the big question. Help me figure out what in the world this is about, because the thing in the middle refers to developmental psychology, and the stuff on the outside is an attempt to visually represent personality psychology. It brings us back to that first question. Which of these two apparent truths, simultaneous truths, is more descriptive of what's actually going on here, or how do we integrate the two of them together? That we are changing, developing people and societies, or that we are persons with static characteristics kind of across that span.
I don't think there was a hard stretch that you had to make me do to see how it...
How they overlap. Yeah, I agree. Like, to me, I feel like it fits, it works. Sometimes you have to just observe first, and the implications and applications come later. Yeah. And so I don't have a lot of clarity around those as of yet, but it maps to me. It seems true, but I don't know a lot of implications other than, maybe who would be a good leader for the next phase, like who could help lead us into green.
It seems like there's something around validation. MBTI alone does that. It's like, hey, every type is different and all are valid, so just appreciate them. Spiral Dynamics gives us some form of direction to our development, so that's nice. Bringing them together suggests, I don't know, maybe it's that as I'm making transitions, I might look to these other types to help me with parts of myself that maybe I haven't integrated. You know, like Jared said, like maybe I haven't, you know, tapped into my aggression, and and I need to allow for space for that, find some healthy place for that. And I could look to the STJs as a guide, right? What do they do? You know, they watch and play sports. What do the STPs do? Well, they go camping. Maybe that actually would be useful for my development, because there's like a base that's maybe missing that would ground me a little bit. Or I'm like a green-minded NFJ sort of societal change maker, and I'm out here advocating for change, but I realize, yeah, I think I really have kind of just, you know, spurned all that orange modernism stuff, and I've just kind of thrown it away. Maybe I'm not appropriately integrating anything from there. What do I have any scientific backing for my presumptions and my things that I'm advocating for? Am I thinking ahead to what it would look like to be post-consequentialist? Is there a deontology, consequentialism, you know, that can be married in yellow somehow? And what might AI do to help me with that? Fun questions could come up with people. We'll bring it to a close here, and hope that those who've been viewing will find some value in those questions. Thanks for making it this far with us, and hope you have a great day.